Kyle Hagler is the president of Next Model, and he's been in the industry for nearly 2 decades. He has handled and launched some of the biggest careers in the modeling industry. When I started being a photographer, Kyle was also one of those people who graciously gave me some models to work with, to test with, and some of his bigger girls who he trusted me with. So I'm always grateful for him for giving me that trust, and I hope you get some great advice from him. So how did you get started in this business?
While I was in college, I worked at a magazine in the fashion section, and I just fell into that job just because I talked about models all the time. Like I was like a little bit obsessive about the movements of models, what they did, what they looked like, campaigns they shot, photographers they worked with. And somebody picked up on that and asked me to work in this magazine, which was a collegiate magazine. It wasn't a fashion publication at all. And I found myself styling, casting models, coming up with creatives for fashion shoots. So then I eventually left the magazine and was asked to intern with someone who was doing a celebrity division at the time at Elite in Atlanta, Georgia.
When was this? What year?
This was 94. We worked with a young Usher. We worked with a bunch of musicians that were based in Atlanta, and our job was to secure advertising engagements for them in the world.
So was there anything, when you got this job at Next, was there anything that you particularly, because you had already worked in the business for so long and you'd seen lots of sides of the industry, was there anything that you wanted to do that was different to what you had done already?
Yes. For me, it was about expanding the conversation and asserting myself more in terms of defining an aesthetic, taking what I found to be beautiful and presenting that to the world of fashion very confidently. I think in my time managing models, I think in the process of learning how to manage models, I kind of followed all of the rules. And then at some point, once I got confident and started to get the validation of securing the work for clients, and started to see that I was able to create longevity for models, I started to be a little more creative about the opportunities I took and about how to position them so that they were different than others. Once I got to Next, which was 3 years ago now, I was in a space where I felt like I wanted to push that even more, where I wanted to really speak to diversity of image. And that's not just in race, but like in terms of personalities and ways of being. If you look at our roster at Next, you will see so many different types of women. I think the one common denominator is that they all have something very interesting to say. But they all have something very different to say, and they all aesthetically are very different. They all come from very different backgrounds, and they all are very representative of different cultures within the context of fashion.
Why is it so difficult for clients and magazines to push the envelope in diversity? I mean, when you walk out on the street in New York, you see diversity. You see the world as it is. And when you open up magazines, you see a completely different world, or you see a very small section of the world. What's holding them back? I mean, you've seen this with your girls especially.
I think most people come from small towns in the world, and while New York is a very diverse, great microcosm, it's not really representative of how the rest of the world works. I think the rest of the world, for the most part, is segregated by economy, by race, by class, by religion. In New York, you're forced to engage other cultures just in the process of going to and from wherever, which is another form of travel. And it does, and I think the reason why most of us live in New York is because we actually like that existence. We like to see other ways of being outside of our own. And we like to be inspired by that and take bits and pieces from that and create a different way of being. Most of us who come to New York, we were either considered the freaks or people that really didn't operate within the lines of what society told us to do. And I think that's the beauty of fashion. And I think the responsibility of artists, and I do feel like designers, photographers, stylists, art directors, or artists, is to pull people into another understanding, to show them that there is a broader view of the world, bigger than what they know.
Right.
And I think in order to do that, you have to have a very big appreciation for diverse ways of being,
Yeah.
honestly.
But I mean, I guess there's also the subject of money, and what sells and what doesn't. I mean, I remember hearing a horrible thing from some magazine, a foreign magazine I was shooting for, and they said I wanted to push this model, the darker skin model, and they said, we can do it for this month, but not this month, because this other month is more important, and we've done tests, and we know that if we put a darker skinned girl on the cover, it'll sell 30% less copies.
Right.
Scary.
I also think that conversation comes up when it's convenient for people to justify racist, prejudice attitudes.
Right.
Honestly, I think that the reality is, and you as a creative know this better than anybody, most shoots are not cast based on the economic ramifications of said casting.
Yeah.
Most of those decisions are very not haphazard, but they're based primarily on aesthetic value. And the other thing we need to consider is that we're in a media business, so we also can create a momentum around anything that we define as interesting.
Right.
But I think you can appreciate the beauty if you're not exposed to the beauty. I think a lot of people just don't push themselves beyond their own boundaries, and
Right.
that's the reason why they don't get it.
They stay in their comfort
You
zones.
know, it's the reason if I like to travel for culture.
Right.
It's not really about landscape. It's primarily because of culture. I want to see how people exist in a certain part of the world, what they eat, how they dance, what their rituals are. All of those things, just to kind of take bits and pieces from that and one, appreciate it, but two, like add to my own existence, because I know that none of us is perfect, and there's a lot to learn from a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish that more people in fashion were open as the industry speaks to
Right.
to diversity. But it's an evolving process, and I think with people like Beth Ann Hardison championing that cause, we've seen a lot of advancement.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of work to be done.
Any life advice for young creatives who want to get into this industry?
I think what I've learned through my process of maturing in the fashion industry is we all have a voice, and we have to be confident in the validity of our experience. We have to define what we see as beautiful, and we have to promote the aesthetic that we find to be very interesting.
Right.
I think when you come into the industry initially as a new person, you believe that no one would ever listen to you.
Right.
And what hopefully you will realize is that everyone in this business started out as that new kid that didn't matter in the conversation, but they spoke up. And the people that are successful had a point of view. They said what they wanted. They pushed the agendas that they thought were necessary, and they won.
Right.
The people who are quiet don't resonate. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, as they say. You have to inspire people. You have to be inspired too.
Right.
And I think most importantly, you have to have fun. The one thing that I'm very grateful for always is that I work in an industry that I love. And I wake up every single day, regardless of the stresses that may be before me, and am generally happy about what I do.
Yeah.
And I think as a photographer, it's like you're, as an artist, because you're an artist, you're showing people something else. And it will change the way that they live. It will change the way that they dress. It will change the way that they see things. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more face-to-face interviews, then you can click here or subscribe somewhere around here.